pop-up saying that this meeting is being recorded. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenter for today's program. This is Joshua Bednarik, is the Deputy Director of the City of Phoenix Planning and Development Department's Planning Division. Joshua has worked for the City of Phoenix since 2002 and has been Deputy Director since 2018. The City of Phoenix Planning and Development Department's Planning Division is responsible for managing the city's urban planning, zoning, site planning, and sign permit functions. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. Excited to be here tonight to give a general overview about zoning in Phoenix and providing some helpful information for entrepreneurs and business owners or people looking to get into that field to understand how to navigate planning and zoning. So just a brief overview of what we're going to cover tonight. Before we dive into the specifics of planning and zoning, I want to talk a little bit about us as a city, how we got where we are and then where we're headed. And then we'll talk specifics about planning, zoning, and signs, oh my. And then really outline some resources for entrepreneurs and business owners to get answers to their questions. And then obviously open it up for any questions or feedback that we have at that conclusion. All right, so Phoenix for the longest time and is today, it's been one of the fastest growing cities in the country, along with the larger Maricopa County. Last year alone, we had 81,000 people move to Maricopa County. That's 221 people a day. A big part of what planning and development does, our department, and especially in the planning division, is working with our community to plan for where those people are going to live, work, and play. So just a couple of notes about Phoenix as a city. We are big and young, close to 1.5 million people, 519 square miles, median age of 32.2, and 334 days of sunshine. I mentioned that we're big. At 519 square miles, you could fit the land area of Chicago and Philadelphia within the boundary of Phoenix. And so, planning for an area of that size and an area that is growing as quickly as it is quite an endeavor. We're fortunate to have a great staff in the planning and development departments, great leadership with our city manager's office and the mayor and council, and a really strong involvement from our neighborhoods and great partners in the development community. So how did we get here and where are we going? Just some background before we dive into zoning. So the outline here in blue is the 519 square miles for Phoenix. And the blue blob right there in the middle is what was the boundary for Phoenix in 1900. So you can see we were much smaller. It's basically what is the boundary for downtown Phoenix today, the original town site. In 1950, we got a little bit bigger. That's a snapshot of downtown, and that's Park Central Mall there. That was really the northern edge of the city at that time. And then 1975, you saw exponential growth. And there were a couple of contributing factors to that post-World War II. The freeway system, FHA loans, but the invention of a wonderful thing called air conditioning and the availability of that for new homeowners was something that really helped Phoenix take off. And you saw the rapid expansion of the city between 1950 and 1975. And then 2016, we really sort of began to reach the edges of that 519 square mile boundary. And there's been a lot of investment as you went into 2000, into 2010, into downtown and the urban parts of Phoenix with the addition of the downtown ASU campus and the city's ever expanding light rail system. So looking forward, where are we going? Going to be close to 2 million people by 2030, close to 1 million housing units, and over 1 million jobs. So how do we manage all that, right? How do we make sure that as that growth continues, that we're building a city that maintains a high quality of life and is a place that people want to continue to call home or go to work? And that's really at the heart of what we do in planning, is trying to create a city that's healthy, equitable, convenient, efficient, and attractive. And we have a variety of tools that we'll talk about that we use to do that. That's important for you as an entrepreneur, a business owner, to understand as you're looking to get started or continue to grow as a business. So there are really three primary tools: our general plan, which provides vision, policies, and land use for the city. Next layer down are area plans and overlays, and then zoning, which is the regulatory framework that helps implement the general plan and the area plan. And for the purposes of our discussion tonight, we're really going to focus on the general plan and zoning aspects of these tools. So the Phoenix General Plan, last adopted in 2015, it provides the basic policy framework and vision for growth and development. Really hits on four primary topics: conservation, redevelopment, infrastructure, and land use, and is sometimes referred to as the blueprint for the city. The map on the left is the general plan land use map, and it's probably the most prominent and recognizable aspect of the general plan. And all the colors on the map kind of help us provide a guide where certain land uses go. Yellow is single family residential, red's commercial, green's open space. And then the graphic on the right provides a more of a 3D illustration of what that looks like. And you can kind of see in that 3D rendering how the general plan helps a city take shape. It provides guidance for where the land uses should go, where more intense uses should go. And as part of that, then we're able to plan for things like infrastructure and services around where the uses are projected to be. So an important thing to understand about the general plan, by state law, your zoning ordinance has to align with it and the zoning in place. And so the general plan land use map informs the zoning on all property. Every piece of property in Phoenix has some type of zoning designation on it. And it has, on top of that, a corresponding general plan land use designation. So as I said in the example in the previous slide, red is generally commercial. A corresponding land use or corresponding zoning district for commercial zoning is C1, and we'll talk about that here just in a sec. So for example, on a land use map where it's gray or industrial, we would have zoning available such as A1, which is one of our industrial districts. And then for a land use designation, again in the yellow category, for single family residential, one of our more common zoning districts is R16. And so there are certainly instances where the map and the zoning don't match up, and those get rectified through either city initiated efforts or through requests by property owners to come in and change the zoning on the general plan map on their own property. But generally speaking, the idea is to have an alignment between the colors on the map and the zoning in place on the property. So just getting back to the basics, zoning has its origins in really trying to separate uses, and the focus on doing that primary focus was to ensure the health and safety of the residents. And so this is certainly an extreme example in this illustration. But the idea when the Industrial Revolution started in the United States, you had many folks living right next to some uses that were neither noxious or toxic, and there were some detriments to public health. And so one of the tools to help protect public health was to install zoning so that you could have some separation of those uses. Now, there certainly were some other things that came out of that maybe weren't as beneficial, but one of the components of bringing about zoning was to help a separation in clustering of appropriate land uses together. So there are really 5 areas of focus for zoning, five things that it basically kind of focuses on and does. The first, as we talked about, is land use, building height, dwelling unit density, setbacks, and lot coverage. And these are all things that you have to keep in mind when looking for a home, but also looking for and potentially trying to identify a location for a business. Is the business that I want to own and operate and see successful allowed in the district where it's at? And what are the restrictions or the standards associated with that particular use in that district? And it's certainly a fairly complex topic, but hoping just to give a general overview of that tonight and point everybody in the direction of some resources to help navigate those moving forward. So land use, there are 60 plus zoning districts on the books in the City of Phoenix zoning ordinance. And I've kind of color coded this list to align with some of the general plan colors. And so again, yellow, orange are your residential, the red is commercial, your gray is more your industrial or kind of commerce park. And then we have a variety of special districts, which I've colored here in purple. But each of these has their own unique standards for building height, lot coverage, setbacks, uses, and density. And it's important to understand what those rules and regulations are as you take a look at properties for potential business use. So we'll talk about that here. So the most prominent zoning district in Phoenix are our single family districts. And the map there on the left is a kind of color coding the land area of Phoenix that is zoned for residential development. So that's the 519 square miles. You can see the vast majority of Phoenix is zoned for single family homes. And, you know, part of why that's certainly in consideration for business owners, there's not a lot of land area that's available for business. And we'll highlight in the next couple of slides where those uses are allowed. So you got to make sure that you're keeping an eye out for the right sites and making sure they're zoned the right way. Here's the commercial, and you can't really see it well on this map, but generally speaking, most of our commercial districts are aligned with our major streets because there's generally is more traffic associated with that. And for the most part, our commercial districts allow office, retail, and services in a kind of an overgeneralization of those. Now, some of those aren't allowed in all of the districts. So for example, if you wanted to do a thing like a grocery store, you could do that in our C1, our C2 district. Same with the coffee shop. If you wanted to do something that was more automobile related, like automobile leasing, in some cases repair, where you're going to have some outdoor components, you have to find a site that's zoned C3. And again, this is an oversimplification, but the idea is to represent that not all commercial districts are the same. They each have a unique set of uses. And generally speaking, in the City of Phoenix zoning ordinance, the more you go up, the more uses you can do. So everything you can do in C1, you can generally do in C2 and in C3. But you can't do things in C1 that you can do in C3. So it sort of it goes in one direction there. Building height. Every zoning district has a standard for maximum building height. Most residential zoning districts and a lot of commercial zoning districts, it's 2 stories, 30 feet. In some of our commercial zoning districts and in some of those purple districts I highlighted, you can go much higher. Setbacks. A setback is the distance that a property has to be from the street or the perimeter property line. And in Phoenix, a predominant setback is to have at least 25 to 30 feet from the street. The idea is to provide space for landscaping and to provide some safe space between automobile traffic and the building and visitors or users of the subject property. Lot coverage, another development standard in all of our zoning districts is how much space can the building itself actually take up on the property. Now this is an extreme example in this illustration. It's about 100% or maybe 95 if you cut out the edges. For the most part, most districts are going to fluctuate somewhere between 25 to 50%. In some of our more urban districts, you can get much more than that. Here's another way to illustrate just on a site how that kind of translates. So again, you've got some frontage requirements with your setback, maximum amount of space that you can cover up on the lot, remaining area can be dedicated to parking or landscaping. I mentioned in some of our urban areas and with the growth of downtown, the expansion of light rail, we're seeing a new kind of urban form taking shape in Phoenix. One that's a little bit more oriented towards a variety of transportation uses, from walking to biking to public transit to cars. And we have two different kinds of codes that help guide that kind of development, where, if you remember, most zoning districts require the buildings to be further away from the street in Phoenix. Well, in downtown Phoenix and along the light rail line, we actually want those buildings to be a little bit closer to the street, because that actually gets you closer to the transit line. And so there's a whole other set and different kind of rules when you're in those geographic areas to create a more walkable, safe, and inviting pedestrian environment. Okay, so what do you do with all that, right? Well, basically, it kind of breaks down into 4 steps. When you want to identify a site, if you're interested in it, verify the zoning with us and through our resources that I'll walk you here in a moment, confirm that the use that you're wanting to do is allowed in that district, and then review the standards of that district to make sure that there aren't any other conditions or restrictions associated with the zoning district itself or that use that may require some extra steps. So for example, in let's say the C1 district, you can do a restaurant, but you'll have to go an extra step if you wanted to do outdoor dining, and I'll highlight that. I want to emphasize that so much of and all this information about our zoning processes and our zoning standards can be found on our website at www.phoenix.gov/PDD. One of the best resources for not only entrepreneurs or business owners, but our residents and all of our customers is a resource called My Community Map Phoenix. And it's an online interactive mapping system where you can click on any property in Phoenix, find out what it's zoned, find out if there's any active permits going on at the property, maybe there's an active zoning application. But it's a great place to start if you're just kind of wanting to get a feel for an area, maybe what the area around a particular location you're looking at is zoned, or what kind of investments might be going in. And then you can really start digging into the zoning on the site. So just as an example, I picked just a random site here. It's vacant. If someone wanted to say, hey, I think I'd like to put a business there, you could then go click on it, pop up, and you'd see, well, that's C2 zoning. Well, what does C2 get me? You click on the link here at C2 zoning, and it would take you to our zoning ordinance. And then you would proceed to go down the permitted use list and see whether or not the use that you want. And there's quite a few uses permitted in the C2 zoning district. But let's say, for example, you had a refrigerator repair business, or you wanted to open up a restaurant, just to give you an example. Here are the conditions associated with opening a restaurant at that particular location at the given setting. And then you would scroll further down into that ordinance, and it would tell you what the standards are, how high the building could be, and how far that building has to be set back from the streets. And if you were to scroll further down, you'd see additional information about landscaping standards. Lastly, as you're looking for, one of the important things that you'll want to know as you look to maybe establish a physical location for a business is advertising and signs. And we in Phoenix, we have a dedicated team that works with our sign customers on the sign permitting process. There's a great website on phoenix.gov/PDD for signs. There's a really great video that walks you through the process, and then a host of documents that walk you through our sign requirements and the sign permitting process. So some key contacts for us. If you have any questions about it or just don't know where to start, don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. Here's my contact information via email and my phone number. You can also reach out to the planning and zoning teams. You can reach them at zoning@phoenix.gov, call the planner line, or again, always access all of this information on our website. Another great set of contacts, and I mentioned that earlier in the presentation, that the city of Phoenix is 519 square miles. It's a large area, and as part of that, the city divided the city planners divided the city up into 15 urban villages dating back to the 80s. And each of those urban villages has a contact, a village planner, that can be a great starting point for anyone looking to invest in a particular area of the city. They can really guide you on where certain zoning you may be looking for is, if you needed to rezone or change the zoning or do something different, whether or not the city would be supportive of that based on the general plan. And so the link there is the contact page for the village planners, and they're tremendous resources for anybody wanting to learn more about that particular area. A couple of the resources that I want to highlight before closing out is, we're a large area. And I mentioned, we're part of Maricopa County, a phenomenal resource for anybody just wanting to understand maybe even beyond zoning what an area is zoned, but what's going on in a particular area is the MAG mapping system. If you go to their Arizona or MAG demographic viewer, it's an interactive map where you can run a series of reports, create maps, and it's so intuitive to understand where certain populations and jobs are. It's just a tremendous resource to learn about what may be going on in a particular area. So I wanted to promote that as a resource for folks out there. And then give a shout out to our upcoming next presentation, our Office of Customer Advocacy, led by Sam McAllen. Sam and his group do a great job, really kind of specializing in helping folks doing adaptive reuse projects or small businesses attempting to navigate our process and help kind of usher them through it. So looking forward to seeing Sam's presentation next month, but also just wanted to highlight him and the Office of Customer Advocacy as another resource for folks looking to do business in Phoenix. Thank you all so much for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. That was very informative. So we have, again, the chat feature at the bottom right-hand corner. So if you have any questions, just click on that chat button and it should open up the panels for you to type in your question. I'll give folks a few moments to see if they have any questions. In the meantime, I will put in the chat a link to where you could sign up for future library programming for small business owners. And I will also insert a survey link for today's program, which you will also receive in your email tomorrow. So any questions before we wrap up? I don't see any in the chat. I'm going to just go ahead and unmute a couple in case they're more comfortable speaking or they don't see the chat option. So if you see something about being unmuted, you could go ahead and ask your question. If you have a headset or a mic.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, this is Christy. I just put the question in, but I'll ask here. I was wondering if there's any specific rules around zoning when it comes to a dog-friendly patio for something like a cafe or a restaurant.
Yeah, it's a great question, Christy. So generally, a patio for a cafe or restaurant would be considered outdoor dining. And you can do outdoor dining in our commercial districts. There are some parameters associated with it. If you're within a certain distance of a single family residential district, you'll have to go through a separate process, which is called a use permit. And it's not as intense as zoning, but it is a public hearing before a hearing officer, where you'll have to basically demonstrate that the proposed outdoor area would not be a negative, would not have a negative impact on your surrounding neighbors. There's a requirement that you notify them of that hearing, and it gives them an opportunity to provide feedback. If you're far enough away, that provision doesn't apply.
Yeah, sorry, Chrissy, I didn't see your question in the chat. Is it addressed to everybody, hopefully? But I'm glad I muted you. Do we have another question?
I was muted. I just wanted to say thanks for answering and thanks for the presentation and all the resources. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here. Thanks so much. And if you ever have any questions, don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Great, thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions, I just want to thank Joshua once again for your lovely presentation. Thank you for those who attended as well. And I hope everybody has a great evening.
Thanks so much, everyone.